The cold night on Archeon Prime. The rain fell in endless sheets across the city of Archeon Prime. Neon lights shimmered on wet steel streets. Flickering signs and languages from 100 worlds painted the darkness in shifting colors. Among the crowd of humans, droids, and strange-shaped aliens, one small figure sat alone beside a vent grill. She was shivering, her thin arms wrapped around her knees, her skin faintly blue with patches that glowed like dying embers. Her breath came out in small clouds that vanished in the cold air. Ethan Hale, a human maintenance engineer, walked down the same street with his hands buried in his jacket pockets. He was tired after another 16-hour shift at the reactor district. He only wanted to reach his small apartment, maybe heat some synth soup, and sleep. But then he saw her, the small figure crouched against the metal wall. At first, he thought she was just another street orphan, one of the many left behind after the last trade war. But something about her posture made him stop. Her trembling was not just from cold, it was fear. The kind of fear that made even strangers feel it in their bones. He looked around. The street was almost empty except for 2 vending drones humming nearby. He slowly approached, crouching to her level. "Hey kid, you okay?" he asked quietly, his voice careful. The girl flinched, pulling the torn blanket closer around herself. Her eyes lifted slowly to meet his, large and luminous, the color of silver frost. Please," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Don't take me back." Ethan blinked, confused. "Back where?" She shook her head violently, her small hands gripping his coat sleeve. "They're looking for me." He felt her hands. They were ice cold, too cold for any child. Without thinking, he removed his own coat and placed it over her shoulders. It almost swallowed her small frame, but the trembling eased slightly. "It's okay," he said gently. "Nobody's taking you anywhere." The girl's glowing eyes darted nervously to the end of the street. And that's when Ethan noticed the patrol drones, hovering silently under the rain, scanning every corner with red sensors. They carried the insignia of the Galactic Authority, the same people who controlled half the systems beyond Mars. He frowned. What would Authority drones be doing in this poor district at midnight? The girl pressed herself against the wall, hiding under his coat. "Don't let them see me," she begged, her voice barely a whisper. Ethan hesitated, looking between her and the drones. Something deep in his gut told him that helping her meant trouble. Serious trouble, the kind that could get a man erased from the registry. But leaving her there felt wrong, completely wrong. "All right, stay close," he muttered, helping her stand. Her legs were weak, her steps unsteady. He guided her into a side alley just as the drones turned the corner, their red beams slicing through the mist. They waited silently behind a rusted cargo bin until the hum faded away. When the sound was gone, the girl finally exhaled, trembling even harder. Ethan studied her face under the dim blue light of a hollow poster. She wasn't fully human. The faint ridges near her temples and the shimmering veins beneath her skin gave her away. A hybrid, maybe, or a species he hadn't seen before. But her expression, tired, frightened, hopeful, was painfully familiar. He knelt again. "You hungry?" he asked, pulling an energy bar from his pocket. She nodded weakly, biting into it as if she hadn't eaten in days. "What's your name?" he asked. She hesitated. "Leary," she said softly. "All right, Leary. I'm Ethan," he replied with a small smile. She didn't smile back. Her eyes kept scanning the shadows. "Who's looking for you?" "My mother," she whispered, the word heavy, filled with something like terror and sorrow mixed together. Ethan tilted his head. "Your mother? Then why are you hiding from her?" Leary looked away, her voice shaking. "Because she's not like you. She's not kind. She hurts people. She destroys." Her small hands clenched the coat tighter. "If she finds me, she'll make me like her." Before Ethan could reply, a low rumble echoed through the alley. Somewhere above, the clouds split apart as a massive airship passed, its spotlight sweeping the district. Through the rain, he saw the emblem painted across its hull, 3 burning stars encircled by a crown. He froze, recognizing it instantly. It was the mark of the Dominion matriarch, a name whispered with fear even among hardened soldiers. Every story he'd ever heard said the matriarch was gone, vanished after the Great Siege of Titan. Billions had died under her command. No one had ever found her. And now, Her forces were searching the slums of Archeon Prime. Ethan turned to the trembling girl. She looked back at him, tears glowing faintly under her eyes. He realized then the impossible truth. The girl he had just wrapped in his coat wasn't just a runaway. She was the daughter of the most feared being in the galaxy. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Only the rain filled the silence. Ethan felt a chill run deeper than the cold air. Because now he knew, helping this child might save her life. But it could also destroy his. Still, he pulled the coat tighter around her shoulders and whispered, "Don't worry, kid. I've got you." And far above them, in the storm-lit sky, the matriarch's ship circled once more, its scanners glowing brighter, searching for what it had lost. The escape through the lower city. The city never slept, but there were hours when even Archeon Prime seemed to hold its breath. Ethan moved fast through narrow back alleys, the sound of rain echoing on steel walls. The little alien girl, Leary, followed closely, clutching his coat around her small frame. Behind them, the glow of patrol lights flickered through the fog like hunting eyes. He didn't know where he was going, only that he had to keep moving. Every few seconds, a drone swept overhead, scanning the ground with red lasers. Leary's hand tightened on his arm each time the hum passed, her body tense like a frightened animal. Ethan pulled her under an abandoned walkway, breathing hard, trying to think. "You can't go home," he said finally. She shook her head. "I don't have a home anymore." There was no drama in her voice, only exhaustion. The kind of tiredness that didn't come from running. It came from being hunted too long. Ethan rubbed his forehead. "All right, there's a place I know, old maintenance tunnels under the reactor zone. Nobody goes there anymore." She looked up at him, her eyes shining faintly. "Why are you helping me?" He hesitated, staring at the cold rain trickling down the wall. He wanted to say he didn't know, but that wasn't true. Something in her reminded him of the past, of a promise he once made when the wars ended, that no child should ever have to pay for what adults did. They moved again, slipping between shuttered stalls and steam vents. The smell of burnt oil filled the air. Somewhere in the distance, sirens wailed, followed by the metallic roar of search ships. Leary stumbled, and Ethan caught her before she fell. "You okay?" She nodded weakly, but her lips had turned even paler, her skin glowing faintly through the coat. "You're freezing," he muttered. "I'll be fine," she whispered. "I can handle cold, but if they catch me..." She stopped, shaking her head. Ethan didn't push. He just held her hand tighter, leading her through a maze of forgotten corridors until they reached a heavy hatch half buried under rust and grime. He pried it open with a groan of metal, the stale air of the tunnels rushing out like the breath of something ancient. They climbed down carefully, their boots splashing into shallow water. The tunnel stretched into darkness, lit only by faint emergency lights that still flickered after decades. "This place looks scary," Leary said softly. "Yeah," Ethan answered, "but scary's better than dead." For a while, they walked in silence, their footsteps echoing off the damp walls. Then Leary spoke again, her voice trembling. "She'll find me, she always does." Ethan stopped, turning to her. "Your mother?" She nodded. "She sees through machines, through people, through everything. She can touch your mind even if you're a galaxy away." Ethan frowned. "That's impossible." Leary looked up at him with sorrow in her eyes. So was destroying 3 worlds in a single day. The words hung heavy in the air. Ethan didn't reply. He just guided her deeper into the tunnels. After a while, they reached an old service chamber, a place filled with broken terminals and rusted pipes. He found an old blanket and a power cell still working enough to heat the air. He wrapped her up near the soft warmth, watching her eyelids grow heavy. "You should rest," he said quietly. "What about you?" "I'll keep watch," he replied, leaning against the wall. Leary's breathing slowed, her small hands still gripping the edge of his coat like it was her last piece of safety. Hours passed. The hum of the city faded above them, replaced by the slow dripping of water from pipes. Ethan's thoughts wouldn't stop turning. What was he doing? Harboring the daughter of a galactic warlord, a being who once ordered fleets to burn colonies. He wasn't a soldier anymore, just a repairman, one man against a machine that could erase him in seconds. And yet, when he looked at the sleeping girl, he felt no regret. There was innocence there, something uncorrupted. Maybe she wasn't like her mother after all. Maybe saving her was worth the risk. But then, the lights in the tunnel flickered, once, twice, then went dark completely. Ethan's eyes shot upward. He could hear something distant, a low pulse, mechanical but rhythmic, like a heartbeat made of thunder. Leary woke with a start, eyes glowing bright. "She's here," she whispered in terror. Ethan stood, pulling her close. "How do you know?" "Because she's calling my name." And through the metal walls, faint but unmistakable, came a whisper that wasn't carried by sound but by thought. "Leary." Ethan froze, his heart hammering. The voice was not human. It was soft, melodic, and terrifying all at once. Every light in the tunnel flickered red, every old system reactivating under invisible control. The matriarch had found them. Ethan grabbed Leary's hand. "We run," he said. But as they turned, the tunnel ahead began to glow. Figures formed out of holographic dust, phantoms in armor, blocking their way. Ethan's breath caught. He knew then that this was no longer about hiding. It was about surviving the night. And somewhere deep inside, as he held Leary close, he realized this wasn't just a rescue. It was the beginning of a war he thought had ended years ago. The voice of the matriarch. The tunnels shook as the whisper faded. Dust fell from the ceiling, and the lights pulsed red like a heartbeat echoing from the walls. Ethan gripped Leary's hand tighter, pulling her behind him. The ghostly shapes ahead of them, armored soldiers made of flickering energy, moved closer, their footsteps echoing without sound. Leary's eyes glowed brighter, fear and memory flashing across her face. "She's using the link," she gasped. "She's seeing through them." Ethan didn't fully understand, but he knew one thing. If they stayed, they were dead. He dragged her down a side passage, splashing through the shallow water, the metal floor vibrating beneath their boots. The phantoms turned, following like shadows that couldn't die. Every turn Ethan took, they matched, every breath felt watched. Somewhere above, engines roared, dropships landing, maybe patrols sweeping the lower sectors. The whole city seemed to be hunting one frightened child. They reached a broken elevator shaft. Ethan looked down. The darkness below seemed endless. "We'll have to climb," he said. Leary hesitated. "I can't. It's too far." "You can," he replied, his voice steady. "I'll go first. Just hold on to me." He slung her onto his back, gripping the steel cables, and began descending slowly, the old metal groaning under his weight. Halfway down, a cold wind rose from below, carrying faint whispers. He could swear he heard a woman's voice, soft but sharp. "Human, do you know what you're holding?" Ethan froze, his knuckles white on the cable. The voice wasn't coming from outside. It was inside his head. He felt something brushing against his thoughts, like invisible fingers turning pages in his mind. "Get out of my head," he growled through clenched teeth. Leary whimpered. "She's talking to you, isn't she?" Ethan didn't answer. He just kept moving, each step slower than the last. When they finally reached the lower level, he collapsed, breathing heavily. Leary knelt beside him, her small hands glowing faintly as she touched his arm, the light soothing the ache in his muscles. He stared at her in shock. "You can heal?" She nodded weakly. "A little. My kind can share warmth, energy, but it costs me." Her glow dimmed slightly as she pulled her hand away. Ethan looked around, realizing where they had landed. The lower tunnels weren't empty. They were ancient, filled with ruins from before the city was built. Strange carvings glimmered faintly on the walls, and in the center stood a dormant machine, half buried in stone. "Where are we?" he muttered. Leary stared at the symbols with a kind of recognition. "This is hers," she whispered. "One of the first places she built." Ethan frowned. "Your mother built this?" Leary nodded. "Before she became the matriarch, she was a scientist. She believed she could make peace between humans and our kind." She placed a trembling hand on the wall. Then something changed her. She found something in the dark, and it spoke back. Ethan felt a chill, and that something made her destroy worlds. Leary's eyes filled with tears. It promised her perfection. She believed it. Before Ethan could respond, a new light filled the chamber, a soft, blue glow forming into a tall, feminine shape. The hologram flickered, stabilizing into the image of a woman, regal, terrifying, and beautiful in an unnatural way. Her eyes burned with cold intelligence, her voice calm like a storm before lightning. "Child," she said, looking at Leary, "you have caused enough pain." Leary stepped back, trembling. No, Mother, I don't want to hurt anyone. The hologram tilted its head. You already have. Every breath you take reminds me of my failure. Ethan stepped between them, instinctively shielding the girl. Leave her alone, he said. The matriarch's gaze turned to him, curious. A human, still foolishly brave, she said, her voice echoing from every wall. You think your compassion changes anything? It only delays what is inevitable. Ethan clenched his fists. Maybe, but it's better than giving up. The hologram smiled. You remind me of the ones who defied me long ago. They too thought mercy could save them. The lights around them flared suddenly, machinery powering up. The old device in the center of the chamber began to hum, rings of energy spinning around it. She's trying to open a gate, Leary cried. We have to stop it. Ethan looked at the machine, massive conduits glowing brighter every second. He didn't know how to stop something built by an alien warlord, but he knew if he didn't try, this planet wouldn't survive the night. Find a control panel, he shouted. Leary ran to a console, pressing glowing symbols with trembling fingers. The hologram flickered, the matriarch's voice deepening. You cannot stop me, little one. You are me. Leary screamed as light burst from her chest, energy crackling between her and the machine. Ethan rushed to her, pulling her back. Stop. You'll burn yourself out. Tears streamed down her glowing face. If I don't, she'll come through. The chamber shook violently, bolts tearing from the walls, sparks raining like stars. Ethan grabbed her, shielding her body with his. The machine erupted in a blinding flash. Then everything went silent. When the light faded, the chamber was dark again. The hologram was gone. The machine cracked and dead. Ethan lay on the ground, bruised and breathless. Beside him, Leary was still, her glow barely visible. He touched her cheek gently. Leary, hey, stay with me. Her eyes fluttered open, weak but alive. She's not gone, she whispered, just waiting. Ethan looked at the broken machine, realizing this was far from over. The matriarch had reached across galaxies once. And now, she had seen him. For the first time in years, Ethan felt real fear. Not for himself, but for the small girl who now depended on him. And somewhere deep in the metal shadows, a single red light blinked back to life, watching, recording, waiting for her next command. The awakening beneath the ruins. The silence after the blast felt unreal. For a long moment, Ethan heard nothing but the sound of his own heartbeat. Dust hung in the air like mist, glowing faintly under the dying light of the machine. Leary lay motionless beside him, her small frame still wrapped in his coat, her glow dimmed to a faint pulse beneath her skin. He pushed himself up slowly, wincing as pain shot through his ribs. The whole chamber was wrecked, metal torn, conduits melted, fragments of light still drifting through the air like dying fireflies. He turned to Leary, gently lifting her head. Hey, kid, stay with me, he whispered. Her eyes fluttered weakly. It hurts, she murmured, her voice barely a breath. You're okay, he said softly, trying to believe it himself. He tore a strip from his shirt, wiping the blood from her forehead. She smiled faintly. You're strange, human. Most would have run away by now. Ethan gave a tired laugh. Yeah, I've been told that. But his relief didn't last long. Somewhere deep below, the ground rumbled, a low mechanical hum building again. He looked toward the shattered core. Energy was still flowing inside, cracks glowing like veins of molten light. She's not done, Leary whispered, struggling to sit. Mother never stops. Ethan scanned the walls, searching for any way out. There, a half-collapsed tunnel leading deeper underground, the only path not caved in. He slung Leary over his shoulder and moved quickly, limping but determined. Behind them, the chamber started to glow brighter again. Whatever power the matriarch had awakened was spreading, feeding on the remnants of her old technology. The tunnel opened into a vast underground hall unlike anything Ethan had seen before. It was ancient, filled with enormous statues, humans and aliens standing side by side, carved from obsidian and crystal. Each held a banner marked with the same emblem, a sun breaking through storm clouds. Leary's eyes widened. This place, it's human, she whispered, but old, older than your recorded history. Ethan set her down carefully. What is it? She stepped closer to one of the statues, her fingers tracing the symbols at its base. It says, "The Covenant of Dawn," she read slowly. "They were the first alliance between our species, long before the wars, long before my mother's empire." Ethan looked around, realization dawning. Then this was a sanctuary. "Yes," Leary said softly. "A place built to keep balance between worlds." They moved deeper, past broken relics and collapsed corridors until they reached a chamber lined with sealed pods. Inside each pod, faint blue silhouettes floated, humans in armor, preserved in cryostasis, their insignias still shining through the frost. Ethan stepped closer, brushing the dust away from one of the panels. "They're soldiers," he whispered, "old-world soldiers." Leary nodded slowly. "The Covenant didn't die. They slept." A voice suddenly echoed through the chamber, mechanical yet warm. "System integrity at 7%, biological preservation holding." Ethan jumped, his hand instinctively reaching for the small plasma cutter at his belt. A faint holographic projection appeared. A man in uniform, tall, his face scarred but resolute. "This facility was constructed during the fall of the Dawn Age," the hologram said. "If you have awakened it, the matriarch has returned." Leary stepped forward, her small voice trembling. She never truly left. The hologram turned toward her, scanning her features. "Subject classification. Hybrid, genetic pattern matches the Prime Directive experiment." Ethan's stomach dropped. "What does that mean?" The hologram paused, then spoke again. "The child carries both human and matriarch DNA. She is the key to either restoration or extinction." Leary's eyes filled with tears. "I never wanted this," she whispered. Ethan placed a hand on her shoulder. "You didn't choose it." The hologram's tone softened. "Then you must choose now. The Covenant's defense systems are still functional, but they require a human command link." Ethan frowned. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying, soldier," the hologram said. "You may be the last human capable of activating them." Before Ethan could respond, the rumble returned, stronger this time. From the tunnels above, red light poured down as mechanical drones descended, their armor gleaming with the matriarch's insignia. They had found them. Leary gasped, clutching his arm. "She's controlling them directly." Ethan looked at the cryopods, then back at the drones closing in. He clenched his jaw. "Then let's wake your ancestors." He slammed his hand on the nearest console, the hologram's eyes flaring bright. "Authorization accepted," it said, releasing preservation seals. The chamber filled with steam and the sound of cracking glass. One by one, the pods opened, and figures began to step out. Tall humans clad in old alloy armor, weapons gleaming faintly under the dim light. Leary stared in awe. "They're alive." Ethan nodded, his pulse racing. "Not for long if we don't fight." The first soldier opened his visor, eyes meeting Ethan's. "Who commands this awakening?" he asked, his voice deep and steady. Ethan swallowed hard. "Ethan Hale, civilian engineer." The soldier studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Not anymore." Above them, the drones broke through the ceiling, red beams filling the air. Ethan grabbed a fallen rifle, handing a smaller weapon to Leary. She hesitated. "I don't know how to fight." He smiled faintly. "Then stay close and don't stop believing that we can win." The soldiers moved with mechanical precision, taking formation as the battle began. Laser fire filled the chamber, sparks lighting the ancient walls. Ethan stood beside them, shielding Leary, fighting not for glory but for something far greater. For the small flicker of hope she carried, and for the belief that even against a god, humanity never bowed. And as the first wave of drones fell, somewhere far above, the matriarch watched through their eyes. Her voice echoed softly across the void, calm and cold. "So, humanity still remembers how to fight." The fire of humanity. The air was thick with smoke and light. Every shot lit the chamber in flashes of blue and red. The newly awakened soldiers fought with silent precision, their movements sharp and disciplined. Ethan stayed near Leary, shielding her as debris fell from above. The echoes of energy blasts shook the ancient hall like thunder trapped underground. The drones came in waves, metallic swarms guided by the will of the matriarch herself. Each one moved like a piece of her mind, flawless, relentless, cold. But for every drone that advanced, a soldier fell only to be replaced by another. The Covenant warriors had awakened to a war they didn't remember, but their purpose remained unbroken. Leary pressed her palms together, whispering softly, her body trembling. The faint light within her chest pulsed faster, spreading through her veins like fire. Ethan turned to her, alarmed. "Leary, what are you doing?" Her voice was weak but steady. "I can shut them down, but it hurts." He grabbed her shoulders. "You've done enough already. You'll burn yourself out." She looked at him, tears glowing faintly. "If I don't try, more will die." Before Ethan could stop her, she stepped forward, her small frame shining like a beacon amid the chaos. The drones froze midair, their red sensors flickering. For a heartbeat, the entire battlefield paused. Then a surge of light burst from her, gentle yet fierce, spreading across the chamber like a wave. The nearest machines faltered, crashing to the ground, their cores extinguished. The soldiers turned, awe in their eyes. Ethan caught Leary as she stumbled, her glow dimming rapidly. He lowered her to the ground. "You did it," he said softly. She shook her head weakly. "No, she'll feel it now. She'll know I fought back." And she was right. Far above, aboard her flagship, the matriarch rose from her throne, eyes blazing with fury and grief. Her voice echoed through every connected machine. "My daughter," she whispered, "you defy me." Down below, the ceiling trembled as heavy bombardment began. Chunks of ancient stone crashed around them. The Covenant commander barked orders. "Protect the child. She's our key." Ethan looked up at him. "We can't hold them here. We need to move." The commander nodded. "Agreed. There's an escape corridor beyond the southern gate. It leads to the surface." They began retreating, covering one another as drones kept pouring in through the cracks. Ethan carried Leary in his arms, her head resting against his shoulder, her breathing shallow. The soldiers surrounded them, their armor scarred, glowing with ancient runes as if the very hall itself lent them strength. Each step forward felt like walking through the end of the world. At the far end of the corridor, an explosion threw them to the ground. A shadow emerged through the smoke, not a drone this time, but a towering figure of light and metal. It was one of the matriarch's avatars, a manifestation of her will. It stood twice the height of a man, its face a perfect, emotionless mask. The soldiers opened fire, but their weapons barely dented its shield. The avatar raised its hand, and energy swept through the hall, tossing men like paper. Ethan crawled forward, still shielding Leary. The avatar's voice filled the space, the same cold melody he had heard before. "You protect what should not exist," it said. "She carries the code that can unmake entire worlds." Ethan coughed, struggling to stand. "She's just a child." The avatar tilted its head. "She's the continuation of your sins." Before it could strike again, Leary's eyes opened, faint light returning. Her voice echoed softly, "Stop." The avatar froze, its armor trembling as cracks of blue light spread across its body. She lifted a trembling hand, her fingers glowing. "I am not your weapon," she said. "I am not your reflection." The light around her flared brighter, and the avatar shattered into dust, dissolving into nothing. The silence afterward felt sacred. The soldiers lowered their weapons, some kneeling instinctively. Ethan helped her stand, his expression a mix of awe and worry. "You're stronger than you think," he whispered. Leary looked up at him, eyes full of sorrow. "Then why do I feel so alone?" He placed a hand on her shoulder. "Because power doesn't make you less human. It just makes you more responsible." The Covenant commander approached, his armor scorched and cracked. "Human, the surface is collapsing. We must leave now." Ethan nodded, helping Leary forward as they climbed through the ruins, following the old passage that led toward the upper city. As they neared the exit, a blinding beam pierced the sky above, the matriarch's ship descending through the storm. Lightning arced across its hull, its shadow covering the entire district. Leary stared at it in silence, her voice trembling. "She's coming herself." Ethan looked up, determination hardening his eyes. "Then we face her together," he said. "No more running." And for the first time since the war began, the city of Archeon Prime trembled not from fear, but from defiance. Because one human and one alien child had chosen to stand. And somewhere deep in the matriarch's mind, a flicker of something long forgotten stirred. A memory of what it once meant to be alive. The heart of the storm. The city burned beneath a sky of lightning. Flames danced along the steel towers, and the wind carried the smell of rain and ash. From above, the matriarch's flagship descended through the clouds, a vast shadow swallowing the skyline. Its hull gleamed with living metal, pulsing with veins of crimson light. Every drone, every machine, every circuit in the city hummed with her will. Ethan and Leary stood on the rooftop of an old transit station, the Covenant soldiers forming a defensive circle around them. Far below, Archeon Prime's lower districts were collapsing under bombardment. But Ethan's eyes were fixed on the massive ship above. He had seen battle once, but never anything like this. Never a presence that felt alive, aware, watching. Leary's small hand clutched his sleeve. "She's here," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I can feel her inside my head." Ethan looked at her, then blocked her out. Tears rolled down her cheeks, glowing faintly. "I can't. She's part of me." The air shimmered, and from the center of the rooftop, light began to gather. A figure emerged from the radiance, tall, graceful, terrifying. The matriarch herself, her body made of both flesh and energy. She looked almost human, yet her eyes burned like twin suns, ancient and cold. When she spoke, her voice carried across the entire city, soft but commanding. "Ethan Hale," she said, "you have something that belongs to me." Ethan stood his ground. "She's not a thing." The matriarch tilted her head, her expression unreadable. "She is everything I created to surpass weakness, yet you would reduce her to a child." Leary stepped forward, trembling but unafraid. "Mother, please stop. You're hurting them." The matriarch's gaze softened for a brief moment. "Leary, my brightest creation," she whispered. "I made you to save us all, not to run away." Leary shook her head. "Save us? You destroyed everything. You burned worlds." The matriarch's eyes darkened. "I burned what could not be controlled, what refused to evolve." Ethan's voice cut through the storm. "You mean what refused to obey?" The matriarch turned toward him, her expression unreadable. "You humans always mistake control for cruelty, order for tyranny, yet you create chaos with every act of mercy." He met her gaze without flinching. "And yet mercy is what makes us human." The rain fell harder, the sky pulsing with red lightning. For the first time, the matriarch seemed uncertain. She looked at Leary again, the glow of her eyes flickering. "You are my design. You are perfection. Why fight what you were meant to become?" Leary's voice cracked. "Because I don't want to be like you." The words struck like a blade. The matriarch's composure faltered, her hands trembling for the briefest second. "You think compassion makes you strong," she said, her tone breaking. "But compassion failed me. It failed all of us." Ethan stepped closer, rain streaming down his face. "No, you failed it." She turned her gaze on him, the air around them trembling. "You dare judge me?" "I don't have to," he said quietly. "Your daughter already did." For a moment, neither moved. Lightning flashed across the ruins, illuminating the two figures, one human, one godlike, facing each other with nothing between them but belief. Then the matriarch raised her hand, and energy surged around her. The Covenant soldiers braced themselves, weapons drawn, but Ethan didn't move. He stood firm, shielding Leary with his body. The matriarch's light gathered into a spear of fire. But before she could strike, Leary screamed, "Stop!" Her glow exploded outward, wrapping around Ethan and the soldiers. The matriarch froze. The energy she had summoned turned against her, dissolving into blue fragments that rained like stars. "Why?" the matriarch whispered. "Why protect those who fear you?" Leary stepped closer, her small form shining brighter than ever. "Because they're not like you. They forgive, they care, and that's what I want to be." The matriarch's face twisted between anger and pain, her voice shaking. "Forgiveness is weakness." Leary shook her head, tears glowing. "No, it's strength. It's what you lost." The storm slowed, the lightning fading to silence. For the first time since her creation, the matriarch looked human. Her lips parted as if to speak, but no words came. She reached a trembling hand toward Leary. "I wanted to protect you." Leary smiled sadly. "Then let me go." The light around the matriarch began to fracture, her body flickering like glass under strain. She looked up at the sky one last time. Perhaps mercy was not a mistake. Then her form shattered into 1,000 fragments of light, scattering into the wind. The storm cleared, revealing the stars above. The flagship above them crumbled silently, its massive frame dissolving into dust that sparkled as it fell. Ethan held Leary close, feeling the quiet weight of her heartbeat against his chest. She looked up at him, exhausted. Is it over? He looked at the fading sky, unsure. Maybe for now. The Covenant commander approached, armor scorched, voice steady. The matriarch's control has vanished. The machines are free. Ethan nodded slowly. Then maybe we finally have a chance. Leary leaned her head against his shoulder, her small voice soft. She wasn't all evil, was she? Ethan shook his head. No, just lost. Above them, the first light of dawn broke through the storm. And for the first time in centuries, Archeon Prime saw a sunrise unshackled by fear. The war was not over, but hope, fragile and human, had returned. The dawn after the darkness. The sun rose over Archeon Prime for the first time in living memory. Golden light spilled across the ruined skyline, glimmering on broken towers and shattered streets. Where once smoke and fire ruled, now warmth returned, soft and uncertain, like a forgotten dream rediscovered. Ethan stood at the edge of the rooftop, the wind brushing against his face. He could still smell the rain, still taste the ash of battle in the air. But for the first time in years, he also felt peace. Below him, the city was waking slowly, people emerging from shelters, blinking at the sunlight as if seeing it for the first time. Beside him, Leary sat wrapped in his old coat, her silver eyes gazing at the rising sun. Her glow was faint now, gentle, almost human. You see that? Ethan said softly. That's what freedom looks like. She smiled weakly. It's beautiful. I didn't know light could feel warm. Ethan chuckled. That's because you've only known fire, not sunlight. The Covenant soldiers stood nearby, repairing what they could. Their leader approached, saluting quietly. The machines have gone silent, human. The matriarch signal is gone from every system. Ethan nodded. Then it's finally over. The soldier shook his head. Wars end, but peace must be built, and that takes longer. Ethan looked back at the city. Then we'd better start. As the morning wind carried away the last embers of the night, Leary's gaze drifted upward. Do you think she's gone? She asked softly. Ethan hesitated. I don't think someone like her ever truly disappears. Leary frowned. Then where is she now? He smiled faintly. Maybe where all broken souls go, waiting for someone to forgive them. Leary closed her eyes, the light within her chest pulsing once, warm and steady. I can still feel a piece of her, she whispered. But it doesn't hurt anymore. Ethan placed a hand on her shoulder. That's because you turned pain into strength. She looked up at him, eyes bright. Is that what humans do? He smiled. The good ones try. They spent the next days helping rebuild what was left of the district. The Covenant soldiers shared their knowledge of old technologies, restoring power and communications. Humans and aliens worked side by side, something that hadn't happened in generations. For the first time, the city didn't feel divided, it felt alive. At night, they would sit near the broken plaza where the great battle had ended. Children played among the ruins, unaware of the history beneath their feet. Ethan would watch them and think of all the years he had wasted believing humanity was beyond redemption. But now, watching Leary laugh softly as she helped a little human girl fix a toy drone, he realized something profound. Hope didn't come from perfection. It came from persistence, from kindness, from choosing to care even when it hurt. One evening, as the stars returned, Leary turned to him and asked, Do you think she wanted to destroy everything? Ethan stared at the night sky, the faint dust of the matriarch's ship still visible among the stars. No, he said slowly. I think she wanted to protect what she loved. She just forgot what love really meant. Leary nodded. Then I'll remember for both of us. The Covenant commander approached quietly, holding a small metallic cube in his hand. This was found in the ruins of the matriarch's core, he said, handing it to Leary. She stared at it, sensing the faint hum inside. It's her memory archive, she whispered, the last fragment of her mind. Ethan looked at her. What will you do with it? She smiled sadly. Keep it safe, not as a weapon, but as a lesson. The commander bowed slightly. Then perhaps the future is safer in your hands than ours. Leary looked out at the horizon. No, it's safer in all our hands, together. The words lingered in the air, simple yet powerful. Ethan realized how much she had grown, not in strength, but in heart. As the night deepened, the city lights flickered back to life. One by one, rooftops lit up, reflecting off the rivers of steel and glass. From afar, Archeon Prime no longer looked like a battlefield. It looked like a beginning. Ethan leaned against the railing, watching Leary as she reached toward the sky, her small hand catching the wind as if she could touch the stars themselves. "Where will you go now?" he asked softly. She turned to him with a smile that carried both innocence and wisdom. "Wherever the light leads," she said. "And maybe this time, it'll lead us home." He nodded, watching as dawn broke again, brighter and clearer than before. The world had changed, the war was over, but something deeper had awakened in both human and alien hearts. A quiet understanding that compassion could rebuild what power destroyed. And as the first rays of sunlight touched her face, Leary whispered a promise to the wind. "I'll protect them, not as the daughter of the matriarch, but as the child of hope." The city rose with her words, alive again, reborn. And far above, among the fading stars, a faint light pulsed one last time. Not in anger, not in power, but in peace.